What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Yeti Express DFS podcast presented to you by Draft Dashboard. You can try out all the tools I use in this video 30 days for $1 by clicking my link in the description below. Gets you access to all my plays, anything I change. Normally I put out my videos on Tuesday, but I was so pissed off with the NFL on Monday with how that game was officiated that I took a whole day off. I usually don't get amped up like that, but that was the worst game I've ever seen in my entire life. So I had a day to cool down before I get into this week's picks. That game really pissed me off though. But now we'll get into this week's picks. Before we do so, click the thumbs up button. That helps me out. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Subscribe. That helps me out. You won't miss any of my videos if you hit that button. Here's a cheat sheet for this week. This is a little early, but we have more plays that trickle in throughout the week. But here's the cheat sheet. All right, we'll get into the position optimizer. Remember, click the thumbs up button, helps me out. First player I like is Lamar Jackson against Seattle. I really like Lamar Jackson this week against Seattle. He's got a 22.1 projection. Seattle 17th against quarterbacks. The only thing that's concerning about this game is there is some weather issues, so make sure you look at the weather report before playing Lamar Jackson. There's expected to be rain. Next play I like is Kylie Murray against the Giants. The Giants' secondary is just god-awful. So Kylie Murray makes for a nice, easy play, I think. 28th against quarterbacks and 28th defense overall. Russell Wilson has been extremely good, and the Baltimore Ravens defense is kind of middle of the pack. Russell Wilson is at home in this game, so I do have some interest in Russell Wilson. Josh Allen against the Dolphins, absolutely. He's super consistent for 1. 2, the Dolphins are bad. 3, he's got rushing upside, so I'm going to include him. Next up I have Aaron Rodgers against Oakland. Oakland secondary, not that great. 21st, 25th defense overall. He might be missing Devontae Adams again. That's something we'll have to keep news on. If Devontae Adams misses this game, his receivers will look more like Lizard and Scatling and Allison. So it's a big blow to Aaron Rodgers if Adams is out, but it's a big bump to a guy like Jimmy Graham, who we'll talk about later in this video. Next up, I have Jared Goff. I always include the quarterback against Atlanta. Atlanta is just god-awful against the pass. 31st, 30th defense overall. They are bad. So Jared Goff is in play this week at 6,200. And that was it for my quarterbacks. My favorites are probably Rodgers and Murray again. I like Kylie Murray every week, but he's in a really good matchup this week, so obviously I'm going to include him. Running backs. My running back list is a little bit shorter. It looks like Saquon Barkley's going to play this week. Don't have a ton of interest in him just because Arizona's secondary is so bad that I think they're going to throw the ball, and Barkley might be on a pitch count, maybe like 15 to 20 touches. We don't really know, but it does look like he's going to play. Dalvin Cook. I like Dalvin Cook this week, 8K against the Detroit Lions at Detroit. Dalvin Cook gets to face a run defense that is 30th against running backs. Not very good. We know Minnesota wants to run the ball. Last week, Minnesota kind of plays to their matchups, and when you get a team that struggles against the run, they're definitely going to run the ball. Last 2 weeks, though, I said Cousins. I mentioned him in both of my videos, and he had 2 great weeks, but again, against bad pass defenses in the Giants and the Eagles. So it's kind of just matchup proof matchup for Dalvin Cook. Next up, I have David Johnson. He was said to be a little bit banged up, but he didn't look all that banged up last week. He had to put up 28.2. I pulled him out of some of my lineups this last week. If you're wondering, I was down a little bit last week. I think I was down $20. I just had too much Tyler Boyd, and then I pulled guys that were injured. I pulled David Johnson out of a lot of my lineups, and I pulled Greg Kittle out of a lot of my or George Kittle. Pulled George Kittle out of a lot of my lineups because he was supposed to only play 50% of snaps, and he still had like 100 yards. So try not to buy into all this injury news, but it is what it is. Next up, I have Leonard Fournette. He's going to be popular. He's projected for 31% projected ownership. Cincinnati 31st against the run. Fournette just does everything. He gets a lot of touches both in the air and on the ground. So I have a lot of interest in Leonard Fournette. He would probably be my cash game running back this week. Next up, I have Chris Carson. He's projected to get 30% ownership. He's just at a good price point. He's had 2 good weeks in a row. Baltimore is not very good against the run. Their defense in general isn't all that good. They're not good against the run. They're not too hot against the pass either. So I included Chris Carson. It looks like he's going to be pretty popular as well. He'd probably be my other cash game running back at 30% ownership. I think I'd just eat the chalk and cash. Next up, I have Tevin Coleman. Not projected to get a ton of ownership. His price came up a little bit. Still only $5,600 though. I think he makes for an interesting shot here. Then at the bottom, Joe Mixon is in a great spot here. 13% projected ownership against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars have been torched by running backs, 26th in the league. Mixon's had a slow season. We could see a breakout week here at a good value price for him. Same thing for Josh Jacobs. He's kind of been all over the place. He's had good games and good matchups. He's had bad games and bad matchups. This is a good matchup for Josh Jacobs. He has the crown next to his name, which means the system really likes him as a play. I like him as a value play as well. Packers 29th in the NFL against the run. So some interest there. Wide receiver. Not very interested in Julio Jones now that Jalen Ramsey is going to be on the Rams this week. That's a tough matchup. I had interest in him until that trade happened yesterday. That's why it's kind of nice to wait a little bit for injury and trade news, just an extra day. But I'll try and get most of my videos out on Tuesday because I like to be the first one out there. Cooper Kupp, 20% projected ownership. Again, Atlanta Falcons are just horrible against the pass. I want all of the receivers. When I say I want all the receivers, I'm not saying play Goff and all 3 of the receivers. I'm saying I'm going to include them in my optimizers. So I run an optimization of 100 lineups. So all these players that I'm recommending are players that I'm interested in, but not all at the same time. In certain circumstances and certain connection plays. So just understand that I'm not just listing off 10 guys that I think could be a good play. I'm listing off these guys that I'm going to put into my optimizer. Next up, I have Larry Fitzgerald, New York Giants, 30th against the pass. Fitzgerald hasn't really had a big game, but he's been super consistent. His price tag is a little steep at $6,100, but the Giants are just so bad against the pass. Same with the Cardinals. This game should be in the upper 30s for both teams, in my opinion. So I'm going to include Larry Fitzgerald in a game like that. Next up, I have Robert Woods, 5,900. He has had kind of a quiet season. He is more of the PPR guy on this team. He catches a lot of balls. He's more the possession guy. He's not the big burner like Cooks is, and he's not the touchdown threat like Cooper Kupp is. But I still have interest in him as well. When you get a team that's as bad as Atlanta, you just have to include everybody. Next up, I have T.Y. Hilton at 28% ownership against the Houston Texans. This game is at home for the Colts, I believe. It's at home. T.Y. Hilton had a couple of quiet weeks battling injuries. 28% projected ownership against the Houston defense. That's 25th against the pass. And especially when there's nobody else that they really throw to. The tight end position's kind of non-existent there. It's a lot of Mack, Brissett, and Hilton. Not too much going on otherwise than that. Next up, I have Golden Tate. Golden Tate, 8% projected ownership, only 22 against the pass for the Arizona Cardinals. I have quite a bit of interest in Golden Tate this week. It's just another good matchup. Next up, I have Tyler Boyd. He was the one that really let me down last week. I had maximum exposure to Tyler Boyd, which was 40%, and he really killed a lot of my lineups. But I'm going to go back to the well. It's a good matchup. There's no Jalen Ramsey on the Jacksonville Jaguars anymore, so Tyler Boyd's in a pretty good spot here. Only thing that sucks is Andy Dalton is his quarterback, but I'm going to roll Tyler Boyd again this week. And then next up, Brandon Cooks. Like I said, I talked about all the Rams receivers. He's the speedster. But again, against Atlanta, 31 against the pass, 31 against receivers. 30th defense overall. Atlanta is awful, and the Rams are going to be playing indoors in this game. I think that's a big boost for them. Calvin Ridley I'll include because I do like this game total. I don't want to include Julio Jones because of Jalen Ramsey, but I can include Calvin Ridley in the better matchup, 8% projected ownership. And then I don't think I have anyone at the bottom here. DeAndre Hopkins, 15% projected ownership. I ran some of my crunches already. I only got 2 or 3% of him. He's in a good spot almost every week. He just has been underperforming and has a pretty hefty price tag, so it's hard for optimizers to like him. An okay matchup against the Colts. I'll get to a couple lineups of him, but not a ton. Adam Thielen. I do like Adam Thielen this week. I kind of looked at the matchup for the Vikings, and big play Slay will probably be on Stephon Diggs, which means Adam Thielen should see coverage from Coleman when they're not in zone. Coleman got torched on Monday night, so I do have interest in Adam Thielen at 6,900. It's a little bit hefty of a price tag, but I do want some interest in him. And just for looks, Julio Jones is projected to get 16% ownership. I just wanted to share that with you guys. I think that number is going to come down just because of the Jalen Ramsey news. Tight ends that I'm interested in this week. First off, Kittle against the Washington Redskins. Redskins 19th defense against the tight end position. Kittle played more than I thought he would last week. He had a pretty good game. If I had kept my original lineups instead of pulled David Johnson and Kittle, I would have probably had a pretty good week. I pivoted from Kittle to Ertz, and Ertz was horrible. I talk every week about how good the Vikings defense is against tight ends, and it was really my only other option, I felt like. So I would just wish I would have known that Kittle was going to play more, but it's kind of some bad news reporting. Next up, I have Evan Engram against the Arizona Cardinals. Another player to keep an eye on. He was questionable, but Evan Engram, 32nd team against the tight end. We just saw Austin Hooper just torch this team, and every tight end has scored a touchdown against the Cardinals, so Evan Ingram's an easy lock to be in the optimizer plays. And the last guy I'm going to include, I don't think there's anyone else down here. Oh, I have one more. But Jimmy Graham, if Devontae Adams is out, Graham is in a smash spot. Oakland is 27th against tight ends, and Jimmy Graham was double covered almost all of the Monday night game. That's why you didn't see him get a whole lot. But this dude leads the NFL in red zone targets in the past 3 years. That were without Devontae Adams is what I'm going to assume. He's battling turf toe, something we'll have to keep an eye on. If he comes back and plays, obviously I won't have as much interest in Jimmy Graham. But with Adams out, I expect to get a ton of Jimmy Graham, upwards of 30 to 40% of Jimmy Graham in my 100 lineups. Next up, I have Darren Waller, 25% projected ownership. Green Bay's defense, pretty good against the pass, pretty good against the tight end. But Darren Waller is really all they have. Oakland's 3-2. They're still playing for a lot. I think we're going to see the ball force fed to Waller this week, so I have some interest in him, and that's the end of my tight end exposure. And then defenses, I'm not going to talk about it from matchup perspective. I'll just let you know, if you see the target button on the right-hand side, that means they're included in my Watch Players tab. And if you see the X, that means I'm taking them out of my Watch Players tab. So we have the Bills we're interested in, the Niners we're interested in, Titans we're interested in, Chargers, Vikings, not interested in the Jaguars, interested in the Bears, Saints, no on the Rams, Ravens, yes, Colts, yes, Packers, Texans, Seahawks, Giants, Cardinals, Falcons, Lions. These are all no's. Alrighty, let's get into the lineup optimizer. We'll make a lineup on DraftKings and on FanDuel real quick. Alrighty, so I do have interest in Kylie Murray, but I think on draft I might be doing the same quarterback on both sites, but Jimmy Graham. Let's see if I can squeeze in. Where's my guy Fitzgerald at? Can we get to anything that works with this? We cannot. Not thrilled about getting David Johnson that much. Go to Chris Carson there. We could also go up to Evan Engram, who's in a great spot. I'm not thrilled about going 2 tight ends, but every once in a while it's a nice way to go. Try and get the Bears in here. Fitzgerald. Carson's pretty chalky, so we could maybe go down from him. There's just not a whole lot to like on this slate for running backs. We might have to play the Ravens defense or the Saints defense. Something like this on DraftKings: Jared Goff, Leonard Fournette, Chris Carson, Golden Tate, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Jimmy Graham, Larry Fitzgerald, and the Saints defense. That's a lineup that I would probably be using quite a bit. And if I was playing cash, I don't normally pay cash, but alrighty. Then we'll move over to FanDuel. We'll build the lineup over here. On FanDuel, I think I might like trying to get to an Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Graham stack. Kittle's a little spendy over here. I'd rather get to Dalvin Cook in the flex. Which of these? Cooper Kupp's a little spendy for me. I'd rather go to... Man, I really love the Rams passing attack this week. Let's see what we can do over here. Something like this on FanDuel: Aaron Rodgers, David Johnson, Josh Jacobs, Larry Fitzgerald, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, Jimmy Graham, Dalvin Cook, Chargers defense. I think that's pretty solid. I'm not really worried about having Aaron Rodgers pair up with Jimmy Graham because the Oakland tight ends are just not, their defense against tight ends are just not very good. So I think we could do something like that safely on FanDuel. Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks for stopping by. Good luck this week, and make sure you click that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thanks for being with us. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our new videos. I also do NBA videos, which is right around the corner. Remember, if you want to use all this information that I just had on my screen, you can do so 30 days for $1 by clicking my link in the description below. Super awesome deal right now. It'll also get you access to the NBA, the NHL, that tail end of the MLB, and the NFL. So all 4 sports right now that we cover are available to use all these tools in. So thanks for stopping by. Here's the dashboard again, all the stuff that it offers. And we'll see you next week, hopefully, and let's win-win.